Halloween is directed by David Gordon Green, director of Stronger and Pineapple Express, and this film marks the return of slasher icon Michael Myers, the original slasher horror villain. Before 80s icons Freddy, Jason, and Chucky arrived on the scene, 1978 brought us John Carpenter's Halloween, creating the genre of a residential slasher that came to dominate the following decade. The film is the 11th film of the franchise and is the second direct sequel to the original 78 film and acts as a hard reset to all that has come before, so all the prior sequels, reimaginings, and reboots now don't exist. And in this one, Jamie Lee Curtis returns as Laurie Strode, the original Scream Queen, and she goes through a similar change to Sarah Connor in Terminator 2, in which she is the helpless victim going through a trauma in the original and has spent their life in between the two films, turning themselves into an absolute badass. And a good thing too, as the transport bus Michael's on crashes, setting Michael free, hungry to kill again. I'll hold my hands up and admit Michael Myers was the last of the old slasher icons that I saw. I didn't end up seeing the film until the other day when I bought the Blu-ray, and I regret not doing so sooner because it was easily one of the smartest horror movies I have seen. The film wasn't scary, but it was unnerving, with Michael spending a good 60% of the movie stalking from the shadows, this creepy shape in the distance. Whilst killing does happen, it's the build and the way it's shot that make it such a classic. So this only added to my hype for this film after the amazing first trailer. And before we dive into this, it will be spoiler free, so no need to worry there. However, I will be giving my review on where the franchise should go after my rating. I will start off by talking about the homages they have to the original. Not only is Jamie Lee Curtis back, but they have John Carpenter returning with the infamous score, albeit slightly tweaked, but still keeping that familiar dread, as well as being credited on writing for the characters. The opening titles keep that same old format, making the audience feel like it's gone back in time. And there are a lot of shots that are recreated from the original in this, and it's not just for cheap nostalgia. They pretty much all feel like natural shots and feature a clever twist on the originals, as well as creating some of the old camera shots from the original. This film brings some original camera movements, including one particular unbroken shot that just follows Michael, and Jesus, does that shot show how stupid the reporters were trying to learn a bit more about him. Michael is well and truly methodical and without hesitation in his kills. He is almost window shopping for victims at certain points. He is ruthless. I honestly felt they were going to break some of the unwritten rules of film with Michael Myers. Now, for those casual fans wanting to be just scared out the building, you will be disappointed. I wouldn't call this scary, but I will say this is one of those films that keep you on the edge, especially towards the final third. It's like the film saw some of this year's horror travesties and decided to step in and remind us all how a horror should be made, because some of the kills in this are brutal as hell, but not once do they go into the torture porn territory. Anything really gruesome, we get the aftermath only, which I really liked from a creative standpoint. As for Laurie Strode, her character is solid. She is a badass, but she is traumatized and damaged. To many others, she is just a crazy old lady that can't let the past go, and I love that about her. She is not a perfect heroine. She is literally a callback to classic heroines Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley, damaged people with PTSD and paranoia, cursed with a grim outlook on life after the horrors they have experienced, but rather than become a shrinking violet, they step up and take the measures needed to never be victimized like that again. That's how a strong female should be written. Hollywood, please do more of that. Now, obviously, we need victims, and if you want to see disposable characters, we get them. But I will say this, the victims do feel more human. In most of the old horrors from the 70s and 80s, every teen had three motives: get drunk, get high, have sex. So, when they die, there is very little to be said about. In this, there is more personality in the small time we are given with these characters, and whilst there is a level of predictability to a lot of them, they are all given some relatable insight into their lives, from being Lord of the Friend Zone, to being selfless, to just being given some very human moments. I won't say I cried for any of them, but I appreciate they were made to feel like people with their whole life ahead of them cut short by a soulless psychopath. On the flip side, however, we do get the dumb moments with the script. Like, for one, whilst people do think Laurie is crazy, they at least know about Michael. So Laurie, stop with the pronoun games and just name drop the guy, and people might take you a bit more seriously. And some of the victims are doing some dumb cliches. For everyone that is making sure that others get away safe or facing their fear, or just taking a stand to Michael. We get those that will go up to something with the knowledge that Michael is on the loose and that something ain't right, yet they will still go up to this obvious danger. Also, there is a turning point towards the third act that feels like it wanted to give the character in particular something more to do than what is mere referenced during the film, and if that had payoff, great, but nope, that ends rather quick. Also, I feel like we needed more development between Laurie and her daughter. The granddaughter is clearly there to fill the high school teen storyline checklist, but Laurie's daughter is constantly told to have had a traumatic childhood, yet we only get about a 1-minute scene showing that. So the way she acts throughout the film towards Laurie is quite annoying. There is also some comedic elements which did feel out of place and broke the tone on a few occasions. Lastly, I feel this film lacked tension in the middle part. Apart from the genius long shot, it is a lot of Michael shows up, kills, moves on, which is a far cry from the shaped stalker in the distance watching potential victims. In that, the film lost one of the original's strongest elements, but it did build characters, so who am I to complain? Jamie Lee Curtis is absolutely brilliant in this. I bought into everything from the trauma to the showered attitude she demonstrates throughout this film. I would dare say it is arguably her best ever performance, and just as a horror fan, it's good to see a Scream Queen back on our screens in this day and age of non-stop demons. Will Patton is brilliant as the sheriff, and he really sold the idea of him being there on the night 40 years ago. Just having another character portray the figure of Michael besides Laurie really helped drive the idea of what Michael is. Haluk Bilginer plays the Loomis role of the Doctor in this, with Donald Pleasance no longer with us, and his character was very intriguing, and just the way his character spoke of Michael generated a lot of intrigue on the relationship between Laurie and Michael. Judy Greer plays Laurie's daughter, and she is perfectly fine, as is Andy Matichak, who plays the granddaughter. It just feels like there should have been a bit more development of their characters. Now, as for the man of the hour, Michael, we have him portrayed both by James Jude Courtney and Nick Castle, the latter of which portrayed the role way back in '78, which I feel is a nice coming full circle gesture. Overall, Halloween, I feel like it's going to get mixed reviews, but this was the perfect blend of old and new, a passing of the torch as it were. The nostalgia was not forced at all, and the characters for the most part feel real, and the death scenes well and truly justified what is a rare 18 rated film here in the UK. That being said, it does take some odd twists and has some poor use of dialogue, and the comedy really damages the overall tone, but overall, it was a good cup of tea. Now, where should the franchise go after this? Honestly, this is getting into spoilers here, but the open-endedness of the film seems to suggest a sequel, but honestly, Michael just stay dead. This one felt like it had the heart and legacy of the franchise in mind, and I just feel like any follow-up will lead to just another bad trend of cash grab sequels. But that's just my 2 cents. So, Halloween 2018, have you all seen it? Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Hit the round subscribe button for more reviews coming all the time. And remember to ding that bell to know when they go live. This is the Smaghead Podcast, signing off.